This is NTV.
Greetings, East Africa, and welcome to your world this Tuesday morning, a day we have set aside to highlight stories of resilience. Here is the thing. We are all reeling from 2020, a year that tested us in various ways. For some, it left us wounded and scarred for life. For others, it totally changed the course of our lives, and some are still trying to recover from it all. Whatever the circumstances, the truth is, this too shall pass. Now, I know that might not make sense due to the gravity of what some of us are dealing with, but today we get to hear from people who have been to rock bottom and back. How did they get back? Well, therein lies the lifeline we all need. My name is Gladys Gachanja, and this is your world. Life throws us numerous challenges. Being able to handle them and move on with life is the essence of today's topic, resilience.
A lot of craft breweries closed down during the lockdown.
South African alcohol ban forces craft breweries to diversify their activities to stay afloat.
In 2010, we found a pyramid of a queen, but we never know the name of the queen.
Egypt unveils ancient treasures found at the archaeological site near Cairo. We have more.
A lot of the cats that we've got in our care have been abandoned.
Volunteers in Cyprus blame the pandemic for the abandonment of cats and sets up a sanctuary for them. Thank you for joining us again on this broadcast. As I mentioned earlier today, we'll listen and share stories of resilience. And speaking of which, is there a season in your life where nothing made sense and you never thought it would even get better? What's your story and how did you stay afloat? Let's share with each other this morning and encourage each other on the same. Remember that hashtag is new normal on our social media handles, and of course you can reach us by text or you can even call in. But before we get to all that, let's take a look at the numbers in as far as the statistics of COVID-19 around the world are concerned. And this morning those numbers stand at 96,008,788 confirmed cases of COVID-19. Out of that number, 68,629,083 have totally recovered from the same. And unfortunately, 2,049,311 have succumbed to COVID-19 around the world. Now, the situation in Kenya, 99,227 Kenyans have been confirmed to have contracted COVID-19, and out of that number, 82,427 have totally recovered. And unfortunately, we have lost 1,734 Kenyans to COVID-19. Remember, these numbers are still changing, unfortunately, still have that upward trajectory, so do take the necessary precautions to ensure that you are do not contract COVID-19. Now, a look at some of the stories making headlines this morning. And Andy Pagard Thompson, 75, is the first to get the Moderna vaccine in Denmark. He got the jab in Vejle at the Lilla Belt Hospital, where he also gets his cancer treatment. Now, Denmark has received about 5,000 doses of the Moderna vaccine, and Denmark leads the EU in vaccinations against the novel coronavirus thanks to a swift and smooth rollout, and even more people would have got the job if it had more available doses. So far, 2.2% of Denmark's population of 5.8 million has been vaccinated since the campaign began on December 27th, and unlike other countries which have, amid delivery concerns, set aside half the vaccine allotment to ensure patients get their second dose, the Scandinavian country has barreled ahead and used up its first Pfizer-BioNTech doses. Elsewhere, clashes broke out for a third consecutive evening Sunday in several Tunisian cities. Now, in the working-class neighborhood of Eta Demen, on the edge of the capital, Tunis, young men hurled rocks at riot police, who responded with volleys of tear gas despite a tight lockdown to curb the spread of the virus. Now, from nightfall, young people gathered again on the roofs of houses to lob stones and fireworks at police and National Guard officers. The Interior Ministry spokesperson said that dozens of young people, mostly aged between 14 and 17, had been arrested after they took to the streets during previous evenings to loot and vandalize shop fronts and cars. To South Africa, and the liquor producers there are being heavily affected by another alcohol ban accompanying lockdown restrictions. As small to medium enterprises, some craft breweries are diversifying their activities, like making hand sanitizer to stay afloat.
Every day you wonder how many days do you have left, and you just hope that something is going to come in and just get you by yourself another day or another week. So the anxiety and the fear is pretty real.
It's kind of difficult to switch to something else when you know your passion is brewing.
A lot of craft breweries closed down during the lockdown, so we've been able to offer contract brewing or beer as a service, where people can bring their brands and brew it here, where we are able to either brew it, ferment it, condition, as well as package it into either kegs or cans.
It was very hard because you come from maybe you have 1,000 to totally you've got nothing per week. Nothing at all.
Per liter of beer, we have a higher employment rate than the big commercial guys, because it's a more manual, labor-intensive process. So the knock-on effect to our local communities is bigger if we need to close down, because then there's real job losses in local communities.
Now, high fences are installed in Washington, D.C. around the White House perimeter ahead of Wednesday's U.S. presidential inauguration. Now, the Pentagon has deployed as many as 15,000 National Guard troops to protect Biden's inauguration on January the 20th amid fears of new violence. Lawmakers walked among armed National Guard patrols in the halls of a U.S. Capitol as Washington was fenced off and bordered following a historic second impeachment of President Donald Trump last week. Now, the city at the heart of American democracy has been a shadow of itself during pandemic shutdowns, but now it is also under heavy guard after Trump supporters' deadly attack on the Congress building. meeting. The building's grounds are ringed by a security fence erected after the attack, similar to the one put up around the White House months ago when protests erupted nationwide against police killings of African Americans. Now, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un oversaw a military parade Thursday in Pyongyang, watching infantry troops, artillery tanks and a flypast with aircraft forming the number 8 to commemorate the party meeting. Now, nuclear-armed North Korea unveiled a new submarine-launched ballistic missile at a military parade in Pyongyang in a calculated show of strength days before Joe Biden's inauguration as the U.S. president. The display came after the 5-yearly Congress of the ruling Workers' Party, where leader Kim Jong-un decried the U.S. as his country's foremost principal enemy. A grinning Kim oversaw the parade wearing a black leather coat and fur hat as he watched mounted cavalry, specialist infantry and artillery and tanks roll through Kim Il-sung Square, and the troops breathed condensed in the cold winter air, and none of the thousands of participants were actually seen wearing masks. Egypt unveils ancient treasures found at the Saqqara archaeological site near Cairo, including sarcophagi over 3,000 years old. Now, Saqqara is a vast necropolis of the ancient Egyptian capital of Memphis, a UNESCO World Heritage Site home to more than a dozen pyramids, ancient monasteries, and animal burial sites.
In 2010, we found a pyramid of a queen, but we never know the name of the queen. Only yesterday, we found a temple for the pyramid, and we found the name of the queen. Her name was Nit. First time to know this name of the queen in the Old Kingdom. And we found a papyri, 5 meters long, beside one of the coffins. One of the coffins belonged to a soldier. We found the axe that he used to fight. We found also games, like the Senate game. If you win, you go to the other world, to the field of Yarrow. This is paradise of ancient Egypt. Kuwait was the wife and the daughter of King Teti, and this is the first time that we know that a king could marry his daughter, because only kings can do that, because Osiris married Isis. But we know about this practice in the New Kingdom only. But this is the first time that we have evidence about the marriage between the king and his daughter in the Old Kingdom.
Now to the cat lovers. At a cat sanctuary set up in Picturesque Hills near Paphos on the Mediterranean island of Cyprus, volunteers are grappling with the surge in abandonments they blame on the coronavirus pandemic.
A lot of the cats that we've got in our care have been abandoned, normally in the car park, normally as youngsters, normally unsterilised, unvaccinated, not very healthy. So we do our utmost best to try and sterilise them, make them as healthy as possible. It's heartbreaking. They don't know how to survive. The food source previously that would have been there through the hotels and the restaurants is not there anymore. And they go through a torrid time when they're first abandoned. And normally these cats are picked up by the colony feeders. Normally they require the vets because they're in such bad condition. So it's been an increase all round food source and abandoned animals. We also take in a number of disabled cats on the area. That's from island-wide. That's blind cats, three-legged cats, nose cancer patients, nose cancer patients. And again, we will try to rehome as many of the disabled cats as we can into loving homes.
The lovely nature, she's a gorgeous cat. and mixes in with the other ones. And she's desperately looking for a forever home. If anybody was interested, you couldn't find a happier, lovely pet to have. She's a treasure to have, and no problem at all. So this is Sabrina.
You feel what they're going through, you feel the pain that they're going through, and a lot of them just want to give up because they don't feel that they can care for themselves and that they can find the food source. And with the increase of abandonments and the decrease in availability of food and the normal food source, it's impacted massively on the animals on the island.
Is that the oldest cat that you've
Well, let's focus on our conversation of the day. Remember, today we really are sharing stories of resilience, and you also have an opportunity to do the same. Remember that hashtag is new normal on our social media handles. Talk to us, even as we encourage each other this morning. And speaking of which, in studio, I have a couple of people who've joined us, and of course virtually too, to just walk with us in the journey where they literally have had to master all the resilience they have to see today. Now, to start off, Tabi Ndisho is with me in studio. She's the founder of My Red is Beautiful. In the other studio, we're joined by Boniface Ndirango, who is Executive Director, Eden House Group. He's also a recovering addict, and guess what? It's been 18 years clean. So we'll get to that story in a moment. We are also joined virtually by Julia Minor, and her story is one that reads from a novel, but she'll give us more about that in a bit. And of course, we are also joined by retired Lance Corporal David Etale, who is a motivational speaker. And I know most of you remember him as a former Tusker FC player. Thank you all for joining us this morning. And before I get to hear from each of you, I think I'll start off with Tabi. And it's a new year. And congratulations, we have some good news. You have a baby?
Yes, thank you so much. 14-day-old.
Oh, wow.
Son, yeah.
So a new year baby, literally.
Literally, 4th of January.
Okay.
Yes.
How does it feel?
Amazing.
Uh-huh.
It's so magical. Just, you know, I was telling you yesterday, just looking into his eyes, and I just smelt. It's so beautiful to just have this life with me. He's cool when he sleeps, you know, although it can be really exhausting changing diapers all day and breastfeeding. But it's such a blessing. Motherhood is such a blessing.
Amen.
I'm so excited. Yeah.
And we celebrate you this morning. Now, just in case you're wondering why we're so excited about this news, listen to what Tabi Ndisho had to say a couple of months back.
How is it hearing? First realizing I have a pregnancy test. It's positive.
Yes.
The doctor says indeed.
My HCG kept rising, Grace. Every time that get me tested, my HCG levels were okay. I was actually 10 weeks pregnant, according to my HCG levels, but there was nothing inside the sacs.
What goes through your mind when you hear there's nothing and there's no heartbeat? At this point, what state are you in?
Angry, frustrated, confused. I think confused is the better part of the situation. I felt very confused because I've never heard of a blighted ovum. I remember calling my mom when I came from the doctor and I was crying, and she was like, "You have what? Blighted ovum? What is that?" Even her, at her age, my mom is 60 now, she had never heard of that. But I remember my mom is a woman of faith. She told me, "Tabi, those kids will come back. I don't know where they are. They could be hiding somewhere in your uterus. They will be back."
I don't care how faith and strength of a mother. Yeah.
And my mom summoned me home. She told me, "Go home, tell the doctor you're not getting a DNC, and when you will come back in 3 weeks to confirm that your children."
Because the DNC is to take out the sacs.
Exactly.
So your mother said no.
No. And that's what I did, Grace. I went back home. Well, my doctor had already told me that the sacs will rupture and I'll start bleeding, and I'll probably need to go for the DNC. So I should watch out for that. So any bleeding, I should go back for a DNC.
Well, clearly you can see that is Tabby, and her story has totally changed today. When you're watching yourself, what's going through your mind?
How could God be this faithful? Who was that girl? Who was that strong? Because Gladys, when I was going through my journey with fibroids and my miscarriages, it was very difficult. Now, actually watching back, I'm actually shocked. I'm like, who was that? Where did that strength and courage come from? But at the same time, it is so exciting to know that now I'm on the other side and I've conquered. I'm a fibroid warrior. I have a son, a 14-day-old son. It's so surreal, and it just makes me really realize that God is such a covenant keeper, that whatever he says he will do, he will surely keep his word. He's not like human beings who change their minds about things. So it's such a full circle moment right now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Now, just in case you're wondering what fibroids are, if you can have those graphics on the screen just to give you a tidbit of what it is that Tabby has been dealing with, and I can tell you very many women have to deal with this too, is that fibroids are actually abnormal, non-cancerous growths that develop in or on a woman's uterus. They often appear during childbearing years and generally classified by their location. So that means there are a couple of them depending on where they are located. Now, they range in size from seedlings, undetectable by the human eye, to bulky masses that can distort and enlarge the uterus. Now, you can have a single fibroid or you can have multiple ones. Now, the symptoms associated to fibroids, and note, most women who have fibroids don't even know they have them because some are not symptomatic. Now, for those that do have symptoms, heavy menstrual bleeding, menstrual periods lasting more than a week, pelvic pressure or pain, frequent urination, difficulty emptying the bladder, constipation, backache, or even leg pains. Now, the complications brought around by fibroids for some, and it's different for each woman, is that it could lead to anemia, fatigue, infertility, miscarriages, placental abruption, fetal growth restriction, and preterm delivery. So just looking at the definition of what fibroids are, the risk factors, complications, and definitely the symptoms, for you, what exactly was it?
For me, I had symptomatic fibroids. So fibroids can be symptomatic or asymptomatic, meaning they carry symptoms or they don't.
Yeah.
So I had symptomatic ones, meaning I was experiencing very heavy bleeding, gas, of course the miscarriages, because I had fibroids called submucosal fibroids that grow in the endometrial cavity of the womb. And every time I'd get pregnant, because that's where normally the baby attaches and grows, would miscarry. So that was generally the kind of fibroids I had.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what did it lead to, and how long did you have to suffer from the same?
3 years. I found out I had fibroids 2 months after my wedding, literally. And it lasted all the way till last year, August 2019, when I did my last surgery. It was an open myomectomy, equivalent to a CS, where they were able to go inside. It was a more invasive surgery and remove all the fibroids. The other surgery I did was in 2017, a laparoscopic surgery, where they removed, they were able to remove the fibroids, but not all of them. So, and that obviously led to me miscarrying over and over again over the 3-year term. But last year, the last surgery I did was successful, and I got pregnant now last year, May.
So what did we do differently?
Nothing. That's the funny thing.
Yeah.
Because I was not trying to get pregnant, Gladys. After I recovered from my last surgery in 2019, August, which was literally a month after I did the interview and unscripted, I was done. I was like, this is a part of my life. I would like to close off and concentrate on other facets of my life, because it wasn't working. When something doesn't seem to work over time, we human beings tend to let it go, shelf it. And that's what I decided to do. I decided I'm not trying to get pregnant again. I'm not going on this journey anytime soon. Let's focus on something else. I make fun. I was like, I'm going to travel the world and concentrate on my career since I have no kids and no responsibilities. But funny thing, I got pregnant. I still don't know how. Obviously, it's the obvious route how people get pregnant.
Yeah.
I can't tell you when it happened. And how I carried this pregnancy to 39 weeks. I still don't understand. It was a pleasant surprise, I must say.
Okay, now we are smiling and happy about the outcome, but that journey has been quite a treacherous one. We'll get more into the details of the same with Tabby in a moment. Let's bring in Boniface. As I mentioned earlier, you are a recovering addict and you've been 18 years clean. Give us a snippet of your story.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much, Gladys. And congratulations, Tabby. I was listening to you and thought to myself, in fact, it reminded me of my doctor who, the first time I went to see, I was asking about help. I didn't know very much about addiction. And I found myself in addiction. And he sat me down and told me, Boniface, hold on. You know, the biggest problem with the problem that you have is that not many people want to get involved or put money in it, mainly because people assume it is a self-inflicted problem. So when I was listening to her, I thought, God, yeah, so that doctor was really right, because a lot of the kind of attitude we get when we talk about our addiction problems is you guys, I mean, you chose to. Luckily for me, I got help. I'm 18 years clean today. This week, I'm celebrating 18 years. I've been involved in helping a lot of people in developing programs across the country. I'm the current chairman of rehab centers in Kenya. But before this, I was living actually, literally, where I was getting in through the back door of Nation Center. We used to have, actually, that area you'd never walk through during my time of using. I lived in the streets of Nairobi, hustling, you know, begging for 3 years.
Okay.
Like a homeless person.
Now, Boniface,
Yes.
it didn't start on the streets. You lived with a family,
Yeah.
then you went to school.
Yeah.
When did you when did you pick up the habit?
Well, yes, you're right. I didn't start off. Actually, a lot of peer pressure when I was a teenager, where I come from, and the kind of examples that I was getting from the people just slightly older than me, that I looked out for and looked up to. And for me was one of the players, soccer stars, who I think our friend, one of the panelists, played with in Tusker FC. So I looked up to him, and he bought me my first drink, gave me my first mirror, gave me my first cigarette, he gave me my first hit of heroin. All this time, I think peer pressure is how I got started, and our culture among the youth of trying out things, the curiosity that goes with it between the ages of 14 to 24 at the university. There are quite a bit of people who get involved, just like I did. And that's how it started for me, and then quickly moved into dependency and into abuse. Abuse of the substances.
How long did it take you to get clean? When you think about that season, how many years were these that you used, and when did you get clean?
Oh, good. That's a good question. I started using for about 1990 to 2003, so those are 13 years. I would say the first few years were experimental, and then the last 4 or 5 years were serious attempts at trying to stop. So the real engagement with the use was about 8 years of pure hell in addiction can be, and we say the people who have been in the program, the kind of programs we go to, say we've been to hell and back. We've been to hell and back. And that is true. There's nothing worse than doing something that you want to stop, but continue doing it all the same, just to be normal, you know? And addiction is that compulsive, obsessive use of a substance despite its negative impact on your life. Yeah.
Okay, now you say you've been to hell and back, and we'll get to hear more about the journey in a moment. Let's hear from Julia. Now, Julia, you said your story kind of sounds like one that I would read off a novel or watch in a movie, and this is because your daughter had a near-death experience. Tell us more.
Thank you, Gladys, for having me this morning. On the 14th of August in 2016, it was a regular Sunday, and we were making our way to church. Our church was having a family function, a family fun day, so it wasn't in the church building. We were going to a field to just have some fun as families. So my daughter and I arrived, and I sent her to the field to go and play, and in less than 30 minutes, she was back and, telling me, Mom, somebody hit me on the head. I have a headache. And I didn't think it was serious. So I just told her, okay, just sit next to me here. We'll get some painkillers and you'll be fine. So I gave her some painkillers and some water. And then I sent her to the car to pick something. And on her way back, she actually could not walk. So I had to carry her into the car. And by the time we were making it to hospital, she had already convulsed. She had passed out. And all this time, I didn't even know what was happening. I didn't even get to know exactly what happened because, kids get hit, kids fall, kids get accidents all the time. So when we got to the hospital is when the magnitude of what had happened just hit home, because I arrived at the hospital and the doctor tells me we need to get an ambulance ASAP because it was just a small clinic that I got into at that time. So we get to the main hospital at Karen Hospital, and upon arrival, the nurses tell me we are experiencing a brain death. And I have no idea what that is. It's just shocking. I don't even know what to do. This is a girl we left home. She was bubbly, she was happy, she was jumping and, playing. And now she's brain dead. What is even brain death? So at that moment, I'm confused. I don't know what to do. Thank God the hospital was able to contact a neurosurgeon, and he came ahead. And what he told was that she had been hit and one of the blood vessels.
Okay, we seem to be having a technical hitch. Or are you back? Okay, let's fix that and then we can hear more of Julia's story. But even as we work on that, retired Lance Corporal David Etale, habari yako?
Nzuri sana. Thank you for having me.
Karibu sana. I hear the Kiswahili is still intact, hata kama uko majuu.
Swahili haiwezi potea.
Good job. All right. So we call you retired Lance Corporal David, and yet you are in the UK and you are Kenyan. Tell us more about your story and how you ended up there.
Oh, actually, my story began from a very young age. Born in the ghetto, everything that we try and do is become professional footballers. That's how my journey began. And I ended up playing for very good clubs in Kenya, but at the same time, I was a matatu driver on the route of Kangemi 23. I was just trying to make ends meet because we were not getting paid a lot of money to play football. So I got involved with the wrong crowd. I was doing things which I wasn't supposed to do. And one of my friends, he was a CID at that particular moment in time. He just came up to me and he told me, look, the British Army are recruiting online. You can try. So that's how I tried joining the British Army. And I ended up in the UK in 2006. I did my 6-month training, infantry. And by the time I was joining, that's when Iraq and Afghanistan was really hot. So I ended up deploying to Afghanistan, and that's one of the most difficult things that I've ever experienced in my life, because this is where you're fighting you're fighting the Taliban, you know, you're face to face with them, you're seeing your friends being blown up left, right, and center, you know, you're seeing your friends being shot, you know, you're taking casualties, you're killed in actions, they're just rising. So for me, that was an experience that haunts me up to date, because I got involved in a bomb blast accident where the vehicle that I was driving, I ended up driving over an IED, improvised explosive device. And unfortunately, I had a few deaths. And I found myself in the UK in hospital. I asked about my friends, some of them were gone. And you start blaming yourself because you've been trained to protect your brothers and sisters when you're out there. But this time, it's you who's drove over an IED and you're thinking to yourself, what the hell is going on? You know what I mean? And I suffered very bad injuries that led to my leg being amputated because of the bomb blast accident. And I ended up, you know, being diagnosed with war post-traumatic stress disorder, which haunts me up to date. You know, I've tried committing suicide twice, you know, and as soldiers, as my friends, I have friends who are double amputees, triple amputees. And all we do right now is just to try and encourage one another just to live a positive life, because, you know, it's very difficult when you're every single night, you're going to bed, but the nightmares of you being in the war zone every single time are haunting you up to date. And that's my life. That's how I'm dealing with it right now.
Okay.
I'm still going, yeah.
All right, we hear you, David, and definitely that is quite a journey, one that you're still on to date. And I pick a word that you've used. I mean, every single day is hellish. You have to deal with these things that you cannot control, but they are part and parcel of you. And that's why this morning, again, we are speaking of the stories of resilience. And resilience is when everything else around you is saying stop and give up, but something inside you tells you you've got to keep going. And Tabi, this is your story. Today we celebrate you have a child, but when you were going through that season where you kept having miscarriages, trying to have a child and you can't get one, it wasn't always easy.
It wasn't. If I can paint the picture for you, at some point I was bleeding throughout for a span of like 6 months. Gladys, your normal menses as a woman should last from 3 maybe to 5 days, the most 7. Different women, different experiences. But when you are bleeding you are bleeding every day for 6 months, and you know you change for probably a sanitary towel, and it can't even, you know, you can't stay with it for an hour because it's soaked and it's leaking, and it's accompanied by heavy clots. If I don't want to get too much into that, graphic into that, but you're experiencing that, and at the same time you're getting pregnant and you're losing a child after another child, and you are supposed to sustain a career. You are supposed to be a good wife, a good sister, you know, all these hats that women wear over a span of 3 years is not easy. And I had just gotten married, as I've told you. It was really devastating. I shared before that I had just tried to commit suicide. You know, just listening to David's story, I can relate, because at some point when I was at home alone, because I had to stop working, you know, and because I was bleeding too much, I was in and out of surgery, you know, all these things, DNCs, or either my fibroids are being removed. I got to a point I got tired. I was like, God, I can't do this. This is too much. I went into depression. I would wake up, I wouldn't want to open my curtains because it was so dark inside. I didn't want any light to come in. You know, I just wanted it to all stop. And it's not easy. It's not the easiest thing for anybody to go through when you are unwell. You can't leave your house. You can't go to work. You can't do anything. It's brutal, you know, on your mind, on your body, on your social life. You can't go anywhere. You can't see people because you're afraid. You go somewhere and, you know, you will bleed and you will leak and you will mess the seats, and it's so messy, and it even devalues you as a woman. You feel like there's something wrong with me. There's something, I'm not 360, and it affects your self-esteem. It affects everything about you. And that at that point, when I reached my very end and nothing was working, I was left with one thing. I was left with God. Because if you are not being exposed to anyone or anything else other than your home and yourself, I was left with this thing of asking myself, I mean, there's someone who created me. Why did he put me here for? If I have to go through all this, is there anything else, you know, other than just leaving? Is there anything else to me? And that is when I started listening to encouraging messages in the comfort of my house alone. I started praying, I started believing. And slowly and slowly I started getting solutions to, you know, the fibroids that I had, because even previous surgeries were not working. I started researching, I started working on myself, and here we are now. So yeah, was it tough? It was very tough, but I'm grateful that there was that voice that kept telling me there is something more, you know, there's more to this. There's more purpose to your life than what you're going through. God just didn't put you here on earth to just suffer. You know, there must be something else, because I always say this, that, you know, the people who God is done with, that are dead, they're in the grave. But if you still have life in you, even if you are struggling to eat, to walk, to move, I believe God is not done with you. I believe there's still purpose, there's still reason for you to be here. Yeah.
Amen to that. It's called Amazing Grace. And speaking of which, Boniface, you said it was a hell on earth, walking the streets, trying to get out of it, being sucked back right into it for a good 13 years. When you look back, how bad did it get?
Well, God. It got really bad, and just being here listening to my fellow panelists, I identify with a lot of the shares, you know, the very deep heart, and for us, and for me especially, is knowing that I have played a big role in getting myself in this, that I am, and, you know, listening to others, at the time, I'm talking about the time, yeah, so I lived in the streets. I've seen some crazy stuff in the streets of Nairobi. I you know, at some point, perhaps one of the worst times for me was when even the street kids that I was living with, within those chorochoros of Tao, where no one goes to, because it was a heap of, unlike now, we've made some progress, but about 18 years ago, just before we moved into a new government that has, it was really bad in this town. I was eating food collected from all the cheap places and burnt together with juala. I don't know whether you know that. And even that one, they were telling me now, Boni, you wacha weenda pia ukachukua yako. I at some point, I remember there was a day I was injecting myself. I even have a scar for that here on my hand. And one of the street kids just stomped it and crushed it on me, and with a slap of a panga on my face. If he had just turned it around like this, I would be dead. Because they didn't want people shooting up. Somebody had died previously. So that was really bad life. And I think, just like as Tabi says, at some point, I thought to myself that God must have a purpose for this. I was almost sure that was my calling, that there is a purpose for this, that somehow I'll turn this around, I'll get recovery, and I'm going to help a lot of many other people. I think my mission and vision came from my drug use, from the worst part of my life. He just turned it around into the best thing that happened to me, and gave me some new life, new values on which to live, and a new purpose that has now carried me for the last 18 years, and I know there's a lot more coming. I know there's a lot much, and I'm a much better person for it, despite all the hurt. And by the way, Gladys, there is a verse I read, I remember during that time. It's in Psalms 38. In the depth of my spiritual, mental, and physical pain, like Tabi was trying to describe, because it's a multifaceted pain. I read that, and I heard King David himself explain in great detail the way I was feeling at the time. So it was never a new phenomena for me. King David himself had gone through that in Psalms 38, and that really encouraged me.
Okay. Now, Boniface, just to take you a little bit back to that journey, you actually detailed there's a time you literally pickpocketed somebody who was in the verge of death because of overdosing, right?
Yep. There was a kid. There's a kid. I will never forget that kid. In fact, one of the reasons I was beaten was because of that kid who died. This kid did not know how to get a vein and all these other street kids did not want to give him heroin or get the vein, mainly because they know that if you mix alcohol and heroin, the likelihood of dying is really exponential. But me, because I needed some money, he asked me to help him get the vein. I just needed a little more, like 50 bob. And so I helped him get that vein, and he injected himself. But the moment he finished injecting, his just head fell on this one side. And I tried to wake him up with a little slap, to just wake him up, to give me the 50 bob. When I saw that he was not waking up, I just picked the 50 bob and left. But when I came back, when I came back, because I went to buy the same stuff actually that I found them doing a first aid. But you know, this was very normal for us, because quite a number of us, when we're injecting, if the drug is a little stronger or you have overused, there's a likelihood of going through a space out time. It's called a blackout for about 15 minutes. So we always think somebody will wake up. And none of the people ever remember that they were in that state. And during that time, any of them, or like this particular boy, died. Died.
Wow.
Yeah?
Wow. Okay, now today you're here to speak of the fact that you conquered that lifestyle and are working with others to make a better life for themselves, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. I believe Julia is now back with us. And now, Julia, you were telling us that the baby gets into an accident, you take her to hospital, she gets into a coma. Now what?
She's in a coma for 40 days. And I remember by the third day, the doctors are already telling us how, even if she recovered, she would be a cabbage. She would never do anything for herself. In fact, those were the doctor's words. She would be a cabbage, quote unquote. And it was quite discouraging. It was painful. It was very painful for my family. But we thank God that we held on, and we actually just requested the doctor to not disconnect the machines, to give her a second chance and see what happens, how this goes. And, it's amazing how when you have an army of people praying, because I can tell you for sure in that season, I wasn't praying. But I thank God that I had an army all over the world. I thank God for my church, for my family, for my friends, who prayed, and they actually did pray, and they held us together in prayer, and they visited in hospital. Because 40 days after she was discharged from the ICU, she was in a coma for the 40 days, discharged from the ICU to the normal ward. A child who would do everything for herself. In fact, I remember the Friday before the accident, she was involved in the sports day at school, and she emerged as tops in the runs. And she's now with me because after ICU, she's in a ward for 1 week, and we had to go home so that she could get therapy because the bill was getting very high. By the time we were living there, the bill was in the 5 million and above. And now I'm given a child who has a tube. I have to feed her through a tube. She's breathing through a tube, and I have no idea what to do about it. But I also thank God again because of the hospital. They really supported in connecting us with therapists because they connected us with a physiotherapy and occupational therapy who now helped us even take care of her from home. Well, before the accident, I was employed, but now I had to, leave work so that I could become her primary caregiver. And it was not easy. It was hard. It was really, really hard. Corporate woman going up the ladder in employment and things looking so bright, and that has to come to a stop. And you have a sick child, and you have never trained in medicine, and you have to figure out how to take care of her. So I had to even learn how to, administer physiotherapy to her. And I really thank God it's been 4 years now. She's now walking. I thank God. We were on a wheelchair for about 1 year, got off the wheelchair, now we walk with a stick. We are back to school. Of course, that was also another challenge, balancing therapy and school. So she had to be out of school for a year so that she could get therapy. But I thank God, I really thank God that she's back to school. I testify of the goodness of the Lord.
No, amen definitely to that, Julia. And I'm thinking, at this point, she was the only child, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
Tell me, as a mother, your firstborn, you have been told she's not going to wake up. She wakes up, but now she has to relearn everything. And you're wondering what at this point?
It was quite devastating, Gladys, to speak the truth. Actually, I had just, in that season, just before her accident, the doctors had told my husband and I that I would never get another child because I had polycystic ovaries. And so there's a story about that. And the doctor comes and tells you 3 days after the accident that she will not make it. And even if she does, she's never going to do anything for herself. It was devastating. It was painful. It hurt. At some point, I actually had questions for this God that I truly believe in. And I almost gave up because, I asked God, the doctors have said I cannot have another child. Then this one whom you gave me has turned out this way. So then what? So I almost gave up, and I almost, I remember telling my husband, okay, so what has life to offer now? What is this? What do you do with this? But I do thank the Lord again, because after that, the Lord has now blessed us with 2 babies, and they're amazing, amazing, amazing babies. Yeah, one is 5 months old. The other one is turning 3 in a few months. Yeah.
Look at that.
We have seen the hand of the Lord, yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So encouraging. And when we come back from this short break, we'll hear from David in as far as how that hell of a life he describes looked like for him, and what hole is this that he literally had to crawl out of. But before we get that the short break, I hear you're talking to us. Even as we encourage each other, remember that hashtag is new normal. Even as you answer this question, is there a season in your life where nothing made sense and you never thought it would ever get better? What's your story and how did you stay afloat? Talk to us. We'll be right back.
news from Molfix. Let's see what they're developing right now.
Molfix pants with anatomic fit technology. New Molfix pants, an invention from babies for babies.
You should also try Molfix.
That we should keep cleanliness. Actually, he said that cleanliness is what is best for a Muslim. And from him, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, hand washing, which is part of cleanliness, hand washing, that we wash our hands, we wash our faces, we wash every time with soap. This is part of what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught us.
Thank you for staying with Your World. My name is Gladys Gachanja. Today we are encouraging each other even as we face a new year. The last year was rough on all of us in different ways. Many are walking into this year wounded or even scarred for life. But here's the thing, as I said earlier, this too shall pass. And it helps and goes a long way when you listen to other people who've been to rock bottom and back. But just because they hang in there, that's why they're here today to speak of their resilience story and also offer encouragement to all of us. So still in studio with me, Tabin Disho, who is a founder. My Red is Beautiful. Boniface Ndirango in the other studio. He's an executive director at the Eden House Group, which is a rehabilitation center. And he's also a recovering addict, 18 years clean. Julia Minor, who also is joining us and giving us her story about her daughter who had a near-death experience. And of course, retired Lance Corporal David Etale, who is a motivational speaker, joining us all the way from the United Kingdom. Thank you all for sharing with us your journeys and being vulnerable with the same. And speaking of which, David, you say there are times that were so dark. Describe them to us.
My darkest moments, during my darkest moments, I got myself involved into reading. And reading was the only way that I could try and disconnect from everything that I was going through. And I read somewhere, there's a book that I was reading and I read, it said, would you rather be at war with yourself and at peace with the world, or at peace with yourself and at war with the world? And when I read that, that just made me feel like, despite everything that we are fighting, because I was fighting until today, I'm fighting more post-traumatic stress disorder where I don't sleep. I can go for 4 days where I don't sleep. I don't close my eyes at all, because every time I close my eyes, I'm thinking that the Taliban are coming for me, or I'm dreaming about how my friends got blown up into pieces, or how my friends were being shot at, or how my accident happened when I got blown up. And every single day when you feel useless and you ask yourself so many questions, why am I here? And it's like what Tabi said before. Sometimes you have to go through these trenches to realize that you have a purpose on this earth. And when I was going through these challenges, everything was haunting me at once. And I couldn't even understand what was going on, because during the day I'll be okay, but when it gets to nighttime, I can't sleep. Even as we speak right now, I'm still doing my therapy with my psychiatrist. I don't even understand it anymore. But one thing that I came to find out was, regardless of whatever you're going through in life, there's always a way that you can try and tune your mind to start thinking about positive things. And for me, you know, burying my dead friends, my brothers, you know, you're treating someone who's had a gunshot wound or someone whose leg has been blown off, you know, it's like in the movies. And for me, I don't even watch action movies anymore, because I can't sit in front of a telly and watch action movies. It will trigger me off straight away. And when it triggers you, you start acting in a way that you don't even understand yourself, you know. So for me, during those difficult and challenging times, I was sitting down and looking at my brothers next to me, because we have this hospital called Headley Court at that particular moment in time, where we have all the injured servicemen and women who've been injured in the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. We are all fighting the same battle, you know. And I asked myself, if I can see my friend who's a triple amputee, no legs, no arm, he's got multiple injuries more than me, and is trying to live a purposeful life, I kept on questioning myself. And I have a daughter and a son, and I said to myself, I don't want to be selfish to my kids, that I'm not there for them when I commit suicide. And those are the things that were running through my head. And I came to realize that there's nothing difficult in this world. Everything is possible. You believe in yourself, put God first in each and everything that you do, and you love yourself. There are so many things that people are going to tell you that you're not going to be good enough. And one thing that I like saying is, I created a quote and I said, don't ever let people's perception of you become your reality. Because the minute you start doing that, you'll start living other people's lives. You need to know to yourself that you, as an individual who's on this earth, you have a purpose. And as long as you're breathing each and every single day, make sure you go out there and make a difference. And for me, coming from Kenya, I didn't know that one day I'll be standing in front of 1,000 British kids that I'm telling them about adversity and resilience. You know, this is something that I've never dreamt of. And each and every school that I go to all over the UK, or even sometimes when I come to Kenya and I sit down and I speak to these kids, I found that there's nothing beautiful in life like using your obstacles and challenges to uplift others. And that's what I live by.
Awesome, awesome, and well done to that. And just listening to that, a lot of the stories of resilience have to do with self-will. It starts there, the need and the will to hang on. But then again, you're doing this against a world that is looking at you differently because of your circumstances. Tabi, talk about that and how you were able to shield yourself.
The world was looking at me differently because, especially in our African society, a woman should not talk about her infertility experience in public. It is taboo. Why would you share that you have lost children on social media? Why would you share that you are experiencing this turmoil in your life? Why? You can just keep quiet. I mean, why should you talk about it in public? You know, that is the reason actually I started talking about my experience, because the minute I started talking about it, I realized there's so much stigma around infertility conditions in our country and across Africa. I will give you an example, Gladys, in how many people talk about fibroids in our continent itself, leave alone in our country. How many people talk about fibroids? I find myself to be the only person talking about it. When we go to Africa, I can count with my one hand how many women are out there advocating for the condition of fibroids. In that in those 3 years I was dealing with the condition, I decided, and I believe I had from God, and He gave me this, He birthed this initiative called My Red is Beautiful, where I become more vocal and help women come out and become more vocal about their condition and their situation, so that they actually find the solutions they need. Because if you are not talking about your problem, how will you be able to get a solution? For example, if you're sick and you don't go to hospital, how will you get healed? You know, if you're not talking about fibroids, if you're not talking about it, and it's so many women are suffering, so many women are losing children, so many women are not finding the solutions they need, how then are we going to be able to conquer this condition? So my mandate, and I believe the reason why God allowed me to go through what I went through, was to just be that voice, that light, you know, to break the barrier of stigma in our society, to break the notion that we should hush about infertility. I don't believe we should keep quiet about it. When I started this initiative, it's been 2 years now. When I started, I remember I would post something about fibroids and no one would comment. And people would DM me and say, you know, Tabby, I also have fibroids. Please help me. So people wanted the help, but they would not want to come out in public. And now, looking back right now, 2 years later, after coming out on the other side, thank God, people are now even becoming more confident and writing to me and posting, for example, my comments on my social media platform, and they are saying, we need help, you know, help us. How do I tackle this issue? Pray for me. I'm also believing. I've been a waiting womb for 10 years. So for me, it's not just fibroids. It's also for all the waiting sisters. That's what I call them, because I've been there. People who are waiting to have children. But the society is telling them, don't talk about it. You know, you should keep quiet. You're not good enough, you know. So for me, it was tough when the world was telling me, you know, keep quiet, you don't have to be vocal about it, you don't have to put it all out there, you know, so many, and even people normalizing it and saying that, you're not the only one who is going through this thing. So many women are going through it. Why do you feel the need to talk about it? You can just keep quiet. But if I don't talk about it, Gladys, who will? When will this stop? When will this stigma stop? A woman who cannot have children, a woman who is suffering from infertility conditions is still a woman, Gladys. Is still valuable in the society. Is still 360 degrees, okay, normal, full, enough. Can still stand in the corporate world, can still stand in a marriage, can still stand in whatever facets or hats of life they wear, you know. They are still good enough. And that is my message. That is my drive. That is my passion. That is why I do what I do. I want to remind the world that any woman struggling with infertility or any woman who is waiting to have children should not be bashed or shunned. They still can stand, they can still be vocal, they're still good enough. And I believe that is why God allowed me to go through what I went through, and He birthed in me the assignment to, you know, make sure that I help women, you know, get solutions to their fibroid condition, and at the same time be an encouragement to every woman who is waiting to hold their child one day.
And the initiative that Tabby is talking about is actually My Red is Beautiful. And as she's mentioned, she's also speaking to other women with other fertility issues. Now, Boniface, you said you always knew you wanted to get out of the streets, but you also detail in your account that there's a doctor who looked you straight in the face and told you he doesn't believe you'll get out of the streets alive. So how do you master the courage to work on getting out of the streets with such a message from such an authority?
Yeah, actually, yeah. I have no idea why he told me that. But that was really harsh, you know. He had assessed me, he had looked at me, and he had thought that I would, like many before me, follow through with addiction in the streets. In fact, he said even worse things, you know, like what would happen to me, you know, and then eventually die in the streets, like many almost 97. He mentioned that statistics, which is true, until recently, that 93% of the people who get involved with heroin do not succeed in quitting, and that usually they die before they are 50. In fact, they have a saying that they're not old addicts. They're not old addicts, meaning you'll die before you even get old. So for me, to be honest, this year I'm celebrating 50 years old.
Yay! Well done.
So usually I'm not too sure. I've never even planned so much, so far away, because I'm never too sure. It's like a bonus living, bonus living one day at a time. But yes, that really gave me a full permission to throw myself into the using, and I'd been told and he told me he was one of the best 2 doctors in Africa at the time in addiction matters. Then one day, I don't know how to, I met somebody like me, who I knew used just like I did. We stood in the same urinal to inject ourselves, and he was looking very clean and sober, and he was looking like a normal person, because we addicts eventually start looking like almost invisible to the rest of the world. You almost don't see us. We look like either beggars or homeless people, or part of the people that people don't want to see or have to deal with. Yes, I'd become one of them, you know. And when I met him, I thought I wanted what he had, and I asked him. He was called Dennis. Hey, Dennis. He used to be famous in this TV station. Hey, come on, Dennis, what did you do? And he took me to one of the meetings around for people who are recovering, like me. And the moment I got in, I met other people who I knew they used to use because I used to see them. Yeah? You know, addicts who had never used, if I go now to the streets deep in the ghetto and meet some of them who are using, if I tell them that I was using 18 years ago, unless I describe in detail so they know that I know, but most of them would not believe it because I look different. But at the time, I looked the part, and I joined this program. It's available for every addict. It is free. Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous are meetings all over the world, you know. I got help, and it's been an amazing journey to also help others who have a problem just like myself. So far, we have helped over 5,000 people, and in our country, we have many rehab centers which are led by people like me. Now we have formed an association together helping other people who have had a problem, yeah, across the country, and who need the help that I was given.
Okay, it all starts with somebody believing in you, but also, again, as we said, self-will goes a long way. And Julia, at this point, your baby is feeling better. She's actually 14 years old now. Julia, can you hear me? Yes, Julia, yes, is your daughter 14 years old now?
She's 13 years old.
Okay, and she's relearning a lot of things. She's in her teenagehood and all that. And you're seeing children grow and you wish so much for her. What is this that keeps you going and gives you the strength to also encourage her, because she feeds off of you?
Yeah, sure thing. She's now 13 years old and she's back to school. She loves school. And we discovered that after the accident, she has gotten this new love for music. So this is one of the things that we say the accident needed to happen for that to be unleashed, because she's writing songs and she loves music. and she's like writing such wonderful songs. You listen to the lyrics and you just wonder, where did this come from? So yeah, the scripture of all things work together for those who love the Lord. This is one of the things that we have seen. She writes.
I think we lost Julia again, but we'll get back to her in a moment. Now, David, you talked about the fact that you do a lot of speaking to, motivational speaking to kids, to other veterans that have been through what you've been through. And I'm just wondering, what are the support systems around you? Who walks with you?
One thing that I normally thank God is here in the UK, if you've served in the military, they have a very good support system. So the support system you get is you get people who are going to, like I've had my psychiatrist since I was diagnosed with war post-traumatic stress disorder. So this is someone who looks after me, checks up on me every time. I've been admitted into psychiatric hospital when it's too much for me, and I think where I'm not feeling safe. And the reason why I do that is because I don't want to harm myself, because there's so much I still have to give out there to the society and the community that's around us. So the support system is really good. And once you leave, they take care of you for life. So you find like someone like Prince Charles came to visit me in hospital when everything happened. I was in Afghanistan with Prince Harry, and you find like the system here really works. Even if you're disabled, the system works. So you find that everywhere you look, there's a support system, and that's the most advantage that we have here. So it's not like, I'm sorry to say, but like some of my friends who are in the Kenyan Army, KDF, I'm working with friends of mine who've been in the war zones, and they have war post-traumatic stress disorder, but they don't know it's war post-traumatic stress disorder. So I have to use my own techniques that I'm being taught to try and share it with them so that they can see how they can improve. Because I always believe in one thing. If you have knowledge and you don't pass it on, it's not knowledge anymore. And I believe right now, the best thing that I can do is give my all to the society and just make sure that all I'm doing is to inspire other people, because I believe the highest human act that you can ever do to yourself is to inspire people. And that's what I live by.
Okay, and definitely it is an uphill task because, as you know, statistically, when it comes to war post-traumatic disorder, not many people are able to push through and live a day-to-day normal life like you've been able to do. And when we come back, I'd like to understand, Father, some of your colleagues that perhaps have walked with you or you've walked with that have different stories to the same. And Julia, I hear you're back with us. So how are we preparing our girl to face the world now that things are a bit different?
We continue with physiotherapy and occupational therapy. We are also back to school. We also encourage her to hang out with her age mates, fellow girls who, for lack of a better word, who are normal. Yeah, so we encourage her to hang out with fellow girls. She goes to school. She sits in a regular class. She goes to church with regular people. So we don't like enclose her in a house and for her to feel out that she's different from others. Of course, she understands that there's some things she cannot do, but we let her relate with everybody else. That for her, life is normal and she's coming on well, and we thank God for that.
Now, when you say we, there is a husband in that story, right?
Yes.
Yes, he was to join us this morning but got called off to a meeting. But how was that season for you, even in the marriage?
It was difficult, very, very difficult. But I do thank God. It was pre-accident. My husband and I were busy at work. The normal Kenyan corporate employees, go to work, come back, go to work, and it was just work, and we hardly even had time for each other. But I must say that after Sandra's accident, my marriage has experienced restoration, if I may say. It has experienced healing, yeah, because we have had now time to, we have had a reason to bring us together to talk about things that are about us and not about what we're experiencing out of the home, because conversations would be around work, because we both worked for the same employer, although different departments. But conversations would be around the employer and what we're experiencing and the people that we are experiencing. So Sandra's accident, my daughter is called Sandra, sorry. Sandra's accident brought us now back home. We had conversations about us. And I must say that he's the champion to see her become the best. He follows up with her therapy. He, once we are done with the therapist and they say this is a far that we can get to, he's out looking for another place that, they can have her and just give her the best that she can get. He's the follower of her school and her music. He's following up with studios to have her, in studio recording her music and writing her music. So he's a wonderful dad, I must say, and he's her great supporter. He's a great supporter to her.
Okay, now remember we are speaking about the support systems because we cannot walk through life on our own. We need a hand through it. Okay, so David says he's married with children. Tabby, you're married and your husband also played a huge role as a support system, right?
Yes. My husband is heaven sent, I must say, Gladys, because for one, he's right now at home with my baby. If I can start there.
For you to be here.
For me to be here.
We celebrate you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, babe, for taking care of our son. And throughout my journey with fibroids, he was the one he never missed an appointment, Gladys. When I was in hospital, he was my caregiver. When I'd come back home and, I would have an emotional breakdown, my mental health was wrecked. I would cry for hours on his shoulders. And there are days he would just allow me to just be. When I'm depressed, sometimes when you're married and you're going through a rough time, your spouse might not understand. Why are you behaving this way? He never questioned me. He allowed me to be. Days I would tell him I just need an hour to myself and lock myself in the room and just cry, and he would allow me to be. I think it's important for me to say that for women who are going through infertility struggles, it's very important to understand that they deal with their emotions differently. There are people who need people around them to heal. Others want to be on their own. I was the be on your own type. I'm very grateful also for my mom and my sister, obviously, and my family. They were very present. But again, for me, my journey was more of like an independent healing journey. The moments I had to just figure out things on my own, not because I didn't want the people around me who were trying to be there for me, but that's just how my mind and my heart knew how to heal in my body. I just had to figure things out on my own. So I think it's very important to say support systems are very important when you're going through a rough patch in life. But at the same time, there are people who deal with stress differently. They'd rather figure things out on their own. Again, it's very important to understand that also that could be depression. For people, it's different. You have to, as family and friends, you have to be very sensitive. There are people who isolate themselves because they're depressed. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people who genuinely know that they're not okay, but they want to work on themselves on their own. I was the type. Of course, I experienced depression before, but I dealt with it. But after that, I wanted to find healing for myself because after traumatic stress, there are things I wanted to work on and dig deep on my own and figure out. And I thank God I came out stronger on the other side. But yeah, my husband was very key. Of course, as I've said, my mom, my sister, my family, and God, Gladys. God was the center of it all. There are days, till today, there are days I get things that remind me of the journey that I was on. That triggers, that remind me, although right now I have a son, there are things that trigger some memories where people probably were not supportive, you know, and all that stuff. And every time I go to pray, every time I spend time in God's presence, you know, every time I listen to an uplifting worship song, I just find my peace. I find my center, Gladys. I think I always say this, and I honestly mean it. I am nothing without God. I'm empty. If I don't pray, if I don't spend time with God, if I don't have those beautiful moments with Him, I don't find my inclination, I don't find my purpose, my strength, you know. And I think without God, even though I had all this, you know, support from my family, I don't know where I would be, if I can put it like that. So yeah, that was my support journey in a nutshell.
I hear you. And when we come back from this short break, Boniface, I'd like to hear where you drew your strength from, because every single day for a recovering addict is literally a new day. A day where you have to hustle all over again to stay afloat. But before we take that short break, I hear that you are talking to us. Is there a season in your life you also felt like, wow, this is the end of it, I don't know if I'll ever get out of this one, but somehow you found your way out of it? Would like to hear what it is, even as we continue to encourage each other this morning. If you can have that on the screen. Mr. Cliff says, man, the pandemic did the worst for me personally, but we thank God I'm adjusting to the new normal. Cliff, we hear you and we celebrate you. Judith Awina says, suffering from fibroids, hope one day zitaisha. Well, Judith, there's so many that have to deal with this, and Tabi is one person who can actually walk with you in this journey, so you can reach out to her. Remember, she's the founder of My Red is Beautiful. You can find her in the social media space. We take a short break. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Raukia siku njema na tunukiwa offers kila siku.
Piga *444# utunukiwe Credo double.
Maji mdosi wangu ametupa simu yangu ndani ya maji.
Mdosi wako kwa sawa?
Venye Nkirota ameniambia ajui na akimpigia simu ashiki. Hi guy, what the
For the women who deserve more, Moped is now in Kenya and more than 40 countries. With its nylon-free surface, new Moped has unique softness and up to 100% protection. Your skin will love it.
Go Ahead is believing to make each day a brighter day. The confidence to create opportunity. It's those small acts that go a long way. Going Ahead is us changing our communities to go ahead. Now, that is the Kenyan spirit.
Allah came love. I never thought I would say this to you, but I'm letting you go.
I am an independent woman and I have enough dignity so that my life doesn't depend on a macho man.
How dare you talk about dignity? You don't know what it is.
Let's not make this more difficult.
Don't be stupid, David. They should pay for all of it. The penalty was for the vineyard and not for them. You know that. But we got into this mess precisely because of these men. I know it was wrong of them, but they did it to help somebody. But the vid tried to... Listen, I'm not asking you. I'm ordering you to do it, okay?
Allah came love.
Sasa, mimi ni Zuri kutoka Safaricom na niko hapa kukuchanua. Kaa macho. Safaricom upiga kutoka 0722 000 000 pekee. Ukipigiwa na namba nyingine, usipeane maelezo yako ya kibinafsi. Tuma namba ya mkora kwa 333 ili Safaricom ichukue hatua.
New year comes with new year deals. Renew your corporate subscription and get a bonus. Subscribe to Nation e-paper for 3 months and get 1 week absolutely free. 6 months and get 2 weeks absolutely free. 1 year and get 3 weeks absolutely free. To sign up, visit epaper.nationmedia.com or email subscription@ke.nationmedia.com. Offer valid till 28th February 2021.
Despite the setback and challenges, George was determined and founded Agri-Tech Organic Farm Company na bado anakiuka nayo, which means going beyond and breaking barriers.
So kazi yenye tunafanya hapa ni ukulima wa wadudu na worms and insects. Now what we have here is now the ready vermicompost.
Mbona hii soil iko wet?
The reason as to why it's wet because when we are feeding tunazipea mbolea ya ng'ombe yenye ni moist kiasi. At times it might be a challenge ukishake pole pole. Worms zitaenda chini. So it requires you move very fast.
And when it comes to organic farming, tunaweza kiuka aje na ni benefit gani hizi vitu zinatuletea?
Tumekuwa tukitumia chemicals here and there, and this has led into a challenge of food security. But now when we come into organic farming, first we work from the soil up to the plant.
Tuzidi na Hustle in association with Safaricom.
It is your world. My name is Gladys Gachanja. Before we get back to our conversation of the day, let's take a look at the other world. Now, Fanny Magui has no doubt Moroccan Jews are already preparing their suitcases to board direct flights to Israel after the North African kingdom normalized ties with the Jewish state. Morocco, home to North Africa's biggest Jewish community and the ancestral homeland of some 700,000 Israelis, is also hoping for an influx of Israeli tourists when the COVID-19 pandemic eases. George Sebat, a Jewish businessman, says, "We are very happy and very optimistic about the future, not only because of the exposure, but also because the economy and tourism will develop, and there are many other positive points for Morocco and for Israel." Elsewhere, a month after cannabis was removed from Thailand's narcotics list, a Thai hospital restaurant has rolled out a weed-inspired menu which has curious customers flocking there to experience its euphoria-inducing fare. Now located in a wellness center in Prachinburi, about 2 hours from Bangkok, the restaurant uses up to 5 leaves in dishes, some of which were traditionally cooked with cannabis before it became illegal.
This small amount can improve mood, focus, and also creativity. But however, it's very early to say that. I know that, and we plan to do more research to support the dishes we develop in the future. So we have Thai traditional doctor working in the restaurant. So when the customer come, our staff will give recommendation.
Interesting. Now, extremely low temperatures in some areas reaching record-breaking levels swept central and eastern Spain with a big freeze, complicating efforts to clear countless roads blocked by snow, with much of the country still blanketed in white following the worst snowstorm in decades. Efforts resumed early to clear the streets of snow, ice and fallen trees despite the brutal cold, prioritizing routes serving hospitals. At least 3 people died when Storm Filomena swept through the country, with Barcelona officials confirming another 2 people, both homeless, had been found dead, with all signs suggesting they died of hypothermia. Overnight temperatures in central and eastern Spain plummeted, reaching as low as minus 25.4 degrees Celsius in Bello village between Madrid and Barcelona. So back to our conversation before we took that break. I had said I'd like to hear from Boniface. Who is your support system? Who are these people that walk with you? Because I believe in our prior encounter, you had told me that you contracted hepatitis C through the journey of using, and that in itself is quite a blow, and you need a support system to walk with you. And just in case you do not know what hepatitis C, if you can have those graphics on air. Well, it is a viral infection that causes liver inflammation and can lead to serious liver damage. Hepatitis C virus spreads through contaminated blood. Now, the risk factors of the same is if you're a healthcare worker who has been exposed to infected blood, which may happen if an infected needle pierces your skin, have ever injected or inhaled illicit drugs, have HIV, received a piercing or tattoo in an unclean environment using unsterile equipment, received hemodialysis treatments for a long period of time, and are born to a mom with a hepatitis C infection. So Boniface, you were diagnosed with hepatitis C a few years now, right?
Yep.
And how was that, and who stood with you?
Yeah, well, thank you very much. There are programs around. Sometimes it's just important that we get our hands in to the right support system. For hepatitis C, I think there was a Ministry of Health program when they discovered the medication recently, not very long time ago, about 5 years ago, and they were giving it through some groups called MDM. So I was lucky to access that kind of help through the NGOs that support this kind of programs. Right now, as we speak, I think there are programs for people who have a heroin addiction problem. They are substituting it with methadone. There are quite a number of rehabs. I'm the chair of almost all rehabs in Kenya. About 200 rehabs spread across the country. Some of them cost a lot more than others. And there are also 12-step programs. For myself, addiction, Gladys, is a little bit different from other illnesses, as I mentioned earlier, mainly because we are considered to have self-inflicted ourselves with the problem. So we have a lot of scarred relationships, especially at home. As I mentioned earlier, at some point I was living in the street, mainly because my own family really didn't want anything to do with me. And for some good reason. I had stolen from them. I was an embarrassment, this graduate who had become a drug addict. And so most people, even in my neighborhood, didn't want to see me. So that's why I came to live in the streets. But you know, God has an interesting way of replacing and providing new support systems. So for myself, my greatest support system to this day is the people I went to school with, and I'm so grateful for them. Starehe Boys Center, my class, was very supportive, and more even in a weird way my graduation class of 2005. I did BCom, and these guys, we chat every night. Even last night we were chatting about this topic, resiliency. I told them I was coming here. So we have a group of people who are a support system. So God for where I lacked in family support because my mom died when I was very young, I've got friends who really genuinely care about me.
Okay.
Very good friends. In fact, when I went to rehab, my director there at the rehab at the time called me out and said I was the first person he had seen brought by friends. Most people are brought by families. And I want to salute all my friends who paid for my own rehabilitation. I see quite a bit of that now, classes coming together to support one of their own, friends coming together to pick out a friend and support them in the recovery process. Another group of people I find like very queer and particular to me is my sisters. In fact, I wonder why we don't have Sisters Day, Gladys. My sisters have never judged me. They support I have three sisters, and they have, even when everything was so bad, there was a time I used to sleep at my sister's couch, and she was married, and she would support me to at least get myself together. So I think there should be a Sisters Day. Is there one?
You can create it for yourself, Boniface. Keep celebrating them.
Yeah. So that one, and most important for people who have an alcohol drug problem, a greater support system we have across the world is the Alcoholic 12-step, Alcoholic Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, and all 12-step programs. That is all over the world.
Okay.
I really that is the best support program that any person who suffers from addiction can access.
Yes. Okay, thank you for sharing that with us. Now we're bringing this conversation to a close, but before we do so, remember we are talking about resilience, coming off, reeling off a year that was quite mind-blowing for all of us. I'm talking about the year 2020, but even as we look into the year 2021, life happened to all of us. As much as we're being positive about this, last year was rough. Tabi, I'll start off with you. You're pregnant, expecting your first child, the pandemic hits, and everyone is saying, oh my God, what has happened to us? But you know you've been in the pits before, and here you are with another challenge, and now to bring life to the earth. How is that for you? How was that for you? And what lessons have you drawn?
Wow. Being pregnant in a pandemic is quite something, if I can put it like that. From careers were affected. We have people's sources of, livelihoods were affected. You have people's emotional and mental health affected. You have people's health being affected, which is actually the biggest thing any pregnant woman was worried about last year, your health. Now, you cannot be found anywhere because of COVID-19. You have to have your mask on. Can you imagine being very pregnant and you have to go up the stairs with a mask on and you're panting and you're trying to catch a breath and sometimes you have, like for me, the very last trimester, I remember you want to go buy groceries and you have to wear your mask. And every now and then you're trying to catch a breath. And those masks are the most uncomfortable things ever. And it's tough, Going to hospital changed. You cannot just walk into a hospital anymore the way you wished. For me, I remember I had to get an appointment from my doctor beforehand, because you just don't want to go sit, you know, around people. Not that you don't love people, but you're worried. Even when you go around people, you are very skeptical. Like, you're like, how is this going to affect the health of me and my child? And then there is the bath. That is now a whole other conversation, because I remember, like, I was in hospital for 4 or 5 days because I had to do a CS, because obviously of my previous surgeries, and visitors are not allowed to come and see you. The staff in the hospitals are they're understaffed, of course, because of COVID. You know, the nurses, the doctors are everywhere, so you won't find nurses who cater to you and your child 24/7 the way you wish. You're not allowed to have your mom or your family there to help you as a first-time mom. You have to do everything on your own. Quite challenging, I must say. So that experience on its own was very difficult. And for any pregnant woman out there, I hope you are preparing yourself. This is not to shock you, but you know, I didn't expect it personally. You go in there, you have to get a COVID test first. I didn't know that. And then, you know, surgery can't be done before your results are out. For example, my CS was to be done at 6 in the morning, and it couldn't have been done until my COVID results were out. They ended up coming out like at some hours later, so my surgery was delayed. You know, there's so many things that go into carrying a child during a pandemic. Just even the fear of I could get COVID, you know, and what happens to my child, or I could actually pass COVID to my child even after they're born. There's just a lot, and also people not being able to come and visit you after you have your baby and support you. You know, that support, you know, as Africans, we like helping.
Yes.
Coming in after you give birth. And for me, I have had to do it on my own, you know, at home. It's not easy. Obviously, every once in a while, my mom is able to come in and my sister. But you know, you have to limit the number of people who come. Some relatives are obviously very understanding and others are not. They don't understand why. And I kind of get it, because there's that joy. You know, we want to meet him, but they can't come. And it's not easy, because I think the biggest takeout for me and for any woman who is pregnant is that you really have to prepare to do it on your own. As tough as that sounds, it is the reality out here, both in hospital and at home. Because obviously you know, you don't want your child to be infected, you don't want to be infected. So yeah, it was tough.
It was tough.
And also trying to figure out your career, because you are scared of losing your job in this climate. Bringing a child to the world when you're not sure about your finances, you get what I mean? It's actually very difficult on your mental health. But I mean, we are here, we thank God.
All right. Boniface, you are part and parcel of the rest of this world as we face this pandemic, but you also come with a history. So when you look at it through the lenses of where you're from, how was last year for you and how are you faring on?
Oh, last year was really difficult, mainly because, you know, our programs are essentially based on the connection of the human person to another. So we get the support. Like I mentioned earlier, I met this guy who was looking clean, and I asked him for help. We go for a meeting, we pray together, we hold hands. You know, a lot of, you know, we say hugs, not drugs. Now we can't hug. Yeah? We can't hold hands. We can't meet as often as our support systems are structured in a way that the human connection is a critical component of the recovery process. And last year we have now adopted to more international meetings online, like what we are doing right now, you know. That's the adoption. But it took time. For me, it was not easy. We had to, scale down on the number of people that we can admit in our various centers. The costs are pretty much the same. So we have had to really move down to skeleton staff, costs increasing of cleaning up and creating better hygiene systems, fewer people who are being admitted, more online work before we adjusted. So we have essentially backbone stuff and cutting down on costs and cutting down on the number of people we admit. And of course, looking out for COVID. So we don't get, in fact, for me personally, I think I put on like 20 kg. That is really serious. I really did awful with the food. I was eating so much, it's like comfort eating. Now my problem is cutting it down. I've started with the exercise. At least I identified this is my serious problem with watching those numbers as were going up. I was eating a lot of popcorns. And it wasn't very healthy.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm really grateful that if we are putting it behind us, though we still have it with us, but the mindset is really now this is something we have to live with. We are grateful, and by the way, perhaps one of the best support systems is internal, knowing that this too shall pass. That this is a short term. Everything works out to good for the good. Everything eventually, even this challenge. It's made me appreciate my family even more. I have a little daughter I spend a lot of time with. It made me connect with people online who I would never have thought, because I had sufficient support system in person. So and it has also helped us really begin to restructure our programs in ways that it can be accessed by many more people online.
Exactly. Okay, the silver lining into all this. And Julia, your baby is doing well. You are flourishing. You have 2 more babies. The last year wasn't easy for any of us. What is your takeout?
I'm actually grateful that last year went the way it went. Now, when I look back, of course, when it began, we all wondered, how is this going to be? But I'm grateful for 2020 because it was a season for me to spend time with family, just be home. Like Tabia was carrying our last born, who was born in August. So I was expectant better part of 2020 and with a newborn. So being home and having my husband sometimes working from home and him being around to help with the toddler really, really helped. And also spending time with my daughter. She was transitioning into teenage. So being home with her a whole year to watch her, see what happens, what's going on, what happens, the hormonal issues that happens with teenagers. So her being home with me also has worked so well for us. So 2020, above everything else, I am grateful that we spent time together as a family, and it is something that we have now, it has become a tradition. And also now with the nuclear family, the extended family. I don't know why we never used to meet and we had the option to, but the fact that 2020 happened and we couldn't do physical meetings because we were all so busy and having different schedules, we now have a tradition of meeting once a month, via internet. So that also is a plus to the family. So we get to know what's going on with the parents, what's going on with the siblings. So the silver lining is that the family unit for me has been strengthened, and I thank God for that.
And you can only get better for 2021. Yes. All right. And for you, David, this pandemic has been real. I understand you actually contracted COVID-19 and are better today. How was that experience, and what is your takeout?
To be honest, 2020 has been tough because I was admitted in the psychiatric hospital. And then I had my best friend that I've known for years in Kenya. He was being treated with cancer in Germany. So after every 2 months, I used to go and visit him before the pandemic started. And then all of a sudden I got discharged from hospital and I had to drive to Germany because I couldn't take a flight. I had to drive to Germany for 16 hours just to go and be with him. And I didn't know that God was telling me to go there and be with him because that was his last week. He passed away. So I ended up driving back to the UK to leave my car, get on a flight because his body was being transported to Kenya. So I went for the funeral. And then just coming back, I contracted COVID on transit. And that was it was challenging. Just having COVID itself, and you're in a hospital where the nurses are telling you you're the youngest person in that hospital. And you know, here in the UK, it's really hitting us really bad.
Yeah.
So you can imagine how it was. So I was in hospital, I'm just from a funeral. So many things are going through my head. I'm like, is this it? You know? But one thing that I came to realize through everything that is going on, despite the pandemic, and it's affecting so many lives out here, mentally, physically, people are losing jobs. One thing I came to realize is in every bad situation, there's always something good in it. It's only up to you to find out what good is in that challenge that you're going through. And I've found that in this pandemic has made me even expand my mind wider. And I'm currently about to finish my first biography book, which in the history of the Commonwealth of the British soldiers who've ever joined, I'll be the second one to ever publish my book. So at the same time, as much as it's tough, we can still find positives in it. And as everyone has said, you know, right now with digital world, virtual and everything, it has made people realize that, you know, human life is very important, you know, and instead of complaining about the negatives, we should thank God that we are here, because you can look at the whole world, how many people are losing their lives. In the UK, since the 24th of December, we are losing over 1,000 people a day. You know, so so one thing is, for me, I just look at it in the sense that I'm just thankful and grateful to God that I'm here, and I'm still able to get in contact with people and still make that difference on social media, just to encourage people who feel that they've lost hope. So I've become a voice for the voiceless, which is a blessing.
Amen to that. And this is why we held this conversation on resilience, just hearing from each other and of course encouraging each other even as we face this new year. We hope that you've gotten a tidbit of something you can hang on to even when the going gets tough. Well, thank you to Tabindishu, founder My Red is Beautiful, Boniface Dirangu, Executive Director Eden House Group, Julia Minor, and of course retired Lance Corporal David Itale joining us all the way from the United Kingdom. We pray for a better 2021 for each and every one of you. Now, tomorrow we'll be right back here from 7 a.m. and definitely looking at something different altogether. Something very close to home, something that has been expounded on, especially in the year that passed. We're talking about mental health. Now, tomorrow we'll be focusing on some of those traps you need to be aware of to ensure that you actually do not walk into them in the new year. And this time, we'll be focusing on the men. So wanaume, tupatane kesho asubuhi as we talk about the experiences you go through and also encourage each other through the journey of life. See you then.
Presenting the new Haptic bathroom cleaner. Compared to ordinary detergents, its thick formulation gives you superior cleaning and kills 99.9% of germs and viruses all around the bathroom. Blue
for the toilet
and red
for the bathroom.
Along came love. I never thought I would say this to you, but I'm letting you go.
I am an independent woman and I have enough dignity so that my life doesn't depend on a macho man.
How dare you talk about dignity? You don't know what it is.
Let's not make this more difficult.
Don't be stupid, David. They should pay for all of it. The penalty was for the vineyard and not for them. You know that. But we got into this mess precisely because of these men. I know it was wrong of them, but they did it to help somebody. But the vid tried to... Listen, Juan, I'm not asking you. I'm ordering you to do it, okay?
Along came love.
Sasa, mimi ni Zuri kutoka Safaricom na niko hapa kukuchanua. Kaa macho. Safaricom hupiga kutoka 0722 000 000 pekee. Ukipigiwa na namba nyingine, usipeane maelezo yako ya kibinafsi. Tuma namba ya mkora kwa 333 ili Safaricom ichukue hatua.
New year comes with new year deals. Renew your corporate subscription and get a bonus. Subscribe to Nation e-paper for 3 months and get 1 week absolutely free. 6 months and get 2 weeks absolutely free. 1 year and get 3 weeks absolutely free. To sign up, visit epaper.nationmedia